Hey guys, just a heads up that I just moved into a new house and I'm in a new room, so the audio quality was not exactly the same and I had a little bit of a few issues and whatnot, but the content is really good, the interview was really nice, so I really still hope that you enjoyed the content anyways. So that was it, and yeah, enjoy the interview. Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Andre, and this is the Tennis and Bagels podcast, a podcast about everything tennis, from recreational tennis that you play in your local club or local courts to professional tennis and Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic and all of that jazz. So today is another special episode. Is my second interview. I think I'm going to be counting all of those from now on until I get to 1,000 maybe. But the thing is, today I got someone really, really special with me. He's here. He works for Tennis Quebec, a organization that essentially oversees tennis in our province of Quebec in Canada. And yeah, I'm really excited for this today. So let's welcome Martijn Kentie. Did I say it right?
Yeah, it's perfect. Great pronunciation. I know that the writing of my name sometimes asks a lot of questions because there's a J in there, but I'm from Holland, from the Netherlands, so it's source of confusion sometimes. But Martin is the perfect way to say it.
All right, great. So can you introduce yourself a little bit, Martijn? Just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, maybe at Tennis Quebec, and whether you play tennis, favorite player, favorite surface, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I work for Tennis Quebec. So like you said, it's the provincial federation. We do everything from regarding tennis development, so certification, tournaments, tours, etc., etc. And for Tennis Quebec, I'm in charge of everything that's regarding our different tours. So we have a school tour. I'm in charge of sponsorships and everything that's corporate development. And then everything that comes around that as well, logistics, management, marketing, etc. So that's my role with Tennis Quebec. Obviously, I work on a lot of different programs, different events. So we would need an hour probably if I had to explain every little detail I worked on. But that's the global role I have. My title is client development and marketing consultant. And actually, with the coronavirus, I'm even now interim secretary and administrative work, because obviously we've all been hit pretty hard with the virus. So we're all pitching in where we can, where we don't have any staff anymore. So we're doing everything we can, and we're kind of getting out of our comfort zones as well. Obviously, I play tennis as well. I grew up with tennis. I'm an okay tennis player. I played pretty high level rugby, but never really high level tennis. But I love the sport. I watch it when the tournaments are there every day. I follow it very closely. I have all the apps for Fed Cup, Davis Cup, ATP, WTA on my phone, ESPN. I follow everything. So I follow everything very closely. And you asked who are my favorite players. I mean, Federer is number one for me. I think for many it is, but that's just because I love his playing style, his image, everything surrounding him. I actually enjoy watching Nadal, Djokovic as well. But when they do play against Federer, I'm happy when the other guys are losing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a few interesting things that came up as since the last time that we talked. Obviously, lots of things are still happening in the tennis world. Like everybody's trying to keep alive, at least in the media. And the latest news I've got today, you must be a little bit sad about, is that Federer isn't playing again this year. And it was already tough because who knows when anybody's going to play because of the coronavirus, and also the fact that the U.S. Open, the USTA has also laid off a couple hundreds, I believe, of staff that they had and coaches and whatnot.
Yeah,
So,
I read something like that. I guess he made a strategic choice not to pursue. I think something related that he relapsed as well, and he had to undergo another arthroscopic surgery.
Yeah.
But I think he kind of feels that the season is not going to be a complete season anyway, and he would maybe feel like he would force it at the end of the year. Obviously, everyone's going to come out swinging when everyone can hit the courts again, but I think it probably is a wise choice considering he's going to be 40 next year, I think.
Yeah, he will in August.
So yeah, who knows? Maybe 2021 will be the last year we see Federer, but I'm crossing my fingers that at least he can add maybe another Grand Slam title to his name, or maybe the gold medal in Tokyo.
Yeah, he has a chance actually.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, a lot of people say he won everything, and he won a gold medal at the Olympics, but I think he still wishes he had that gold medal in singles and in doubles. Obviously, if he has both, that's even better. But
yeah.
I think that kind of nags at him that he doesn't have that one prestigious title. He doesn't have that in his home yet.
Yeah. I for one, I am a fan of Novak Djokovic. I've said this a few times here in this podcast. And I remember a few years when he kept losing before 2011 and the transformation. He lost a lot of matches to Federer, and I was really happy when he got to win again. However, I really do enjoy Federer playing, and I think last year, as you said, he might be retiring because we will never really know. But next year he is actually coming to Montreal, so this is actually my one goal for next. My prayer for next year is that he actually would come to Montreal so that I can get his autograph. That would be like my...
Yeah. Well, I hope you'll get the chance to see him. I do think, however, that even though Toronto is going to be played, I think they're still going to have the women's come to Montreal next year. I don't know whether that's official. I mean, things change pretty quickly, but yeah, if you get the chance to see him play, I mean, it's incredible. It's so much... He's so smooth and maybe sometimes too smooth because that's how he gets kind of tense.
Yeah.
Especially against guys like Djokovic, who is so good at getting every single ball and early and deep inside the court. But yeah, I mean, they're all amazing champions. I mean, we all have our favorite. You have the Nadal clan, you have the Djokovic clan, or the Federer clan. And and as those guys get closer with all the number of titles, things heat up between fans as well, and between experts as well. I mean, I'm definitely no expert, but I do believe that Djokovic would get more titles, Grand Slam titles, than Federer. But I actually would hope Federer still remains at the top, but I mean, it's not going to take anything away from his career. I mean, if Djokovic wins more, he definitely deserves it. It's not like he won any of them through all walkovers either. Yeah.
So just maybe tracking back, you mentioned the how the coronavirus affected everybody, and we talked a little bit about the USTA. But like, essentially in your time. How have you endured like these times, essentially, because you're working for Tennis Quebec? You already mentioned a few of the drawbacks that you had in the organization, but have you been maybe watching any of the replays online? Have you been following this part of tennis?
Well, actually, at the beginning, obviously we still are so busy getting everything ready and discussions with either the government or with health officials. Regarding what phase we can go into going back on the tennis courts. So we're pretty busy with that, and at the beginning, obviously, we wanted to follow every tournament who we're going to cancel, maybe move it to a later date in the year, like the French Open, for example. But actually, last week was the first time that I actually watched a full game on replay, I was just browsing on Facebook, and I follow like all the pages regarding tennis. And the Davis Cup was actually the Davis Cup page was showing. I think it was the 2014 Federer Gasquet final. The game. The match that won Switzerland their first Davis Cup title, and I just started at 8:30 putting it on because I felt like maybe it's like the best points, and it actually showed like from the beginning, and I just left it on my second screen, and still watched it out of the corner of my eye like it was a new game. I was really excited. I knew the result, but still was really exciting to watch. And I mean, like ATP, WTA, they're all putting out their top 10 plays and awesome points, etc. And I kind of watch that on repeat. It's always cool to even see like the best points of 1980.
Yeah,
it's pretty exciting, but that's the only game I've watched completely. And if I see something pop by on my screen, I'll probably always watch it for a bit.
Yeah.
If not, it's just on TV or.
Yeah.
So obviously it's sad that there's no sport at all, and tennis obviously is one of those few sports that goes all year round, and everyone travels every day. Well, every week for the least. So it's tricky at the moment, but it's when there are some replays, I'll try and watch it, and I think next week or something there is Djokovic's tour around his side of Europe. He's gonna go around Croatia, Serbia, and all those countries. So if they show it anywhere, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see if I can watch the Patrick Mouratoglou, because he has a tournament happening, I guess, this weekend. And he got a bunch of pretty good players. Matteo Berrettini is in there, Stefano Tsitsipas, Fognini. So it looks like a good roster. The one drawback I find with those exhibition tournaments is that I have never really been able to find a stream for them, like online. So it was just like the one thing that was tough for me in terms of that. So that was the one drawback for me was that. And I guess because the actual pro tournaments are not necessarily happening right now, they're doing their best in actually trying to get people to get excited about those. But I guess the only true excitement will be when they finally announce the first pro tour tournament after quarantine. I guess that will be the one thing that we're all looking forward to the most.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think us as much as the players. I mean, I see on their Instagram pages that they're starting to practice again, and they look pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
But obviously, they get to play, and we still have to wait to see them in proper action. But we're gonna be patient, I guess, and we're lucky here in Quebec that we can start playing tennis again, so we can kind of get a feel ourselves again.
So I know, like right now, I think when we started talking, it was just about the time when the courts were finally reopening, and but right now it's been pretty good. Like for my side, I've been playing tennis a few times, and it was people were really organized and whatnot. But at the same time, it's kind of like, is there anything that you personally have been practicing other than the actual tennis? Like before it was out there, have you practiced anything at home? Like, do you do any fitness? I know you said you're playing pretty high level rugby, so I think it must be rough as an athlete to like slow down, I guess, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely not a nice time when you can't do anything. Obviously, I've been outside going for a few runs and trying to stay in shape, obviously, but actually at the beginning of the quarantine, it wasn't too much of a problem for me because I had a major injury on my ankle.
Oh, okay.
So for about 10 weeks, I couldn't do anything for a few weeks. I was walking with crutches, and I had that special boot, orthopedic boot, because I actually majorly twisted it and partially ruptured some ligaments playing tennis, and it was maybe a week before everything was shut down. So yeah, it for me it was actually really good because I could do the whole getting back in shape, getting that angle strong again with some elastic bands, with actually a tennis ball, getting a good feel. So my girlfriend, I was telling her, I was like, oh well, me and Federer were kind of the same. It all works out pretty well. I can't play, he can't play. We're both injured.
Yeah.
Obviously, I cannot compare myself to him, but I thought it was for the fun of it. It worked out well. But and obviously when the courts reopened, I tried to get a few hits as well. I went to play only twice so far. Want to take it slow, and everyone wants to go and play right now. But I'm trying to go again tomorrow if I get. I booked a court with a friend of mine in Côte de Neige, Outremont, Park Kent. But I think they're expecting rain, so that will be my luck for tomorrow. But with a bit of luck, we'll have dry weather when we can play.
Yeah.
So the quarantine was relaxing, getting back in shape slow, while getting that ankle strong again. And now, now I just want to play every day if I could, but I have to be patient on that side as well.
Yeah, especially because as obviously you know more than most people that it's not because we can play tennis that life has just fully gone back to normal, right? So most courts are open, and but there has been some guidelines, some restrictions. What are some of those like major restrictions? Like, is there anything that is really, really important for people to know? And does it affect all areas equally? Because Montreal being one of the biggest centers of the outbreak, I had questions in myself, like whether the courts in Montreal were open just as equally as everybody else, or are the rules the same everywhere in Quebec?
All the rules apply for the entire province. We give our recommendations and our guidelines for the entire province. So far, only outside tennis courts are open. I can't go into an inside tennis court thus far. We built a guideline program that goes in several phases, 6 to 7 phases. We are since the 8th of June, so 2 days ago, we entered the second phase only. And obviously you have the general hygiene recommendations of washing your hands as frequently as possible definitely before and after your tennis game. Only playing singles so far, no doubles. We have in the second phase, tennis lessons are allowed again, where a tennis instructor can have up to four pupils with him. But because there's a teacher, he can assure that they're always keeping their 2-meter distance. So obviously the 2-meter distance, we want that to be that everyone keeps that 2-meter distance at all times.
Really followed strictly, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's if already the government and the health officials say keep 2 meters distance. We're lucky with tennis that there's even a net that separates us, and it really doesn't happen that often that you're both at the net ping-ponging at the ball. So if people can keep that distance, same thing, like don't sit on the same bench when you're changing sides. When you're changing sides, if you need to, well, each change from on either side of the net. And then in general, if you don't have to be at the tennis courts, don't stay there, just go home. If you have symptoms, don't go to your tennis lesson or don't go play with anyone. And what we've recommended as well is when you go play with someone else, you each mark your balls. So you don't have to hold or grab with your hands the ones of your partner. Most tennis players, they will pick up the ball with their foot and a racket, or they can even push it to the other side. Well, we have to take precaution in these first phases, and like you said, things are starting to start up again, but doesn't mean that the virus is gone. I mean, it's still very much alive. Maybe less people get infected or are in hospital, but that doesn't mean you're carrying the virus around you. Even people that are asymptomatic that think, well, I don't have the fever, I'm not in hospital, I'm still gonna go out. They don't wear a mask. You can still infect people, and that's what we really want people to be aware about. That even though you're feeling fine, doesn't mean you're not carrying anything without your knowledge. So we try to definitely recommend to the government how we see each phase play out. Like doubles, we kind of explain to them how we see things, that it can be safe, but ultimately they will decide in which phase it will be authorized. And then on our website, we have an entire section dedicated to the COVID-19 pandemic with Q&As. We have posters that people can just print out and put on their tennis courts, and we update it as soon as there's news from the government and health officials. So we make sure that everything can be played in the most safe and healthy way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's obviously for all of us who are just playing recreationally most of the time, actually. And you mentioned lessons as well. But coming a little bit further into the pro rankings. First of all, I had a question in terms of maybe that's just for myself, I guess. Does Tennis Quebec have any sort of ruling in terms of any professional tournaments, like maybe juniors, or maybe juniors are not professional, but like ITF 25Ks or challengers? There is one in Granby that I know of.
So Tennis Quebec has over 300 sanctioned tournaments. So this is all for everything that goes from age 6 up to whatever age. Well, obviously the veterans, we have a veteran association that takes care of that when you're 30 and over. But anything younger than that, you have the Quebec Championships, you have the qualifications to go to the Canadian Championships. That's already obviously handled by Tennis Canada. Granby, Repentigny, you have Gatineau as well, Drummondville. Those are all under the Tennis Canada banner. So they're in Quebec, and we as a partner, we are involved, but not at the tournament itself.
Okay. So 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 that means essentially that none of those tournaments are going to be happening either. Professional tournaments are a no-go at the moment.
Everything is on hold. We do, however, allow outside tennis club to organize a local tournament. So if you're a little club and you want to organize a tennis tournament for all the kids, you can, as long as you have safety precautions. You only do singles. Obviously, there has to be a really set schedule so that you don't have too many people on the grounds at the same time waiting to play. But if people have an idea how they can organize like a local recreational little tournament, they obviously can. But all sanctioned tournaments where you actually play for ranking points, those are cancelled till the beginning of July thus far, and then obviously we will see where we're at and what is allowed. But we can't predict the future. It could be that we're not playing tournaments till next year. Who knows? But yeah, no one can really predict that. We can only take it maybe 3 weeks at a time, and then see what is what.
Mm-hmm. And so now following the same professional thing, it is obviously known that Rogers Cup is fully organized and overseen by Tennis Canada. But there was obviously there was a drawback in terms of Quebec. I believe they have rules in terms of how nothing of that magnitude is allowed until August 31st, at least. So the Ryder Cup here in Canada, in Montreal, is not happening. But in Toronto, that you mentioned before, that there are talks of like maybe it happening. And do you think you there's any sort of like how are they planning on doing that? And if it ever happens, do you think you would like to go and watch it?
Well, I mean, if Toronto is happening and it's easier for us to actually go out of the province, I'll definitely try and go there. Who knows if it is held, if it's with spectators or not. Obviously, for Montreal, it was pretty easy because the government straight away said no big events till 31st of August. So Tennis Canada didn't have a choice but to cancel straight away. For Ontario, it's not the case, so they left it quite open. And because the ADP and WTA, they have canceled their events only till the end of July, I assume they still keep it a close mind in potentially holding the event. I don't know whether it will be the case. I couldn't be able to really express myself on that. But if they could, that would be great, obviously. But then there would be as well the risky part. I read that Djokovic was saying, if the US Open is being held as they're thinking right now, I will not be traveling to New York. So it would be the same question maybe for Toronto. Would there be any players that are willing to come to Canada? It would be cool if only Canadians were there. Maybe we could see a Shapovalov, Felix Auger-Aliassime final. If no one else wants to travel, but I mean, if it's not safe and you cannot get any of the all the international players, especially the top players who usually play at a Masters 1000, I don't know whether it would be financially responsible for them either. They have top people there that are doing all those evaluations. I should think they probably have all different kinds of scenarios. But like you asked, if there is a Rogers Cup in Toronto and I can actually pop by and see a few games, I would definitely not hesitate on taking that opportunity.
Cool. So maybe going forward with from here in tennis, in Tennis Quebec and in Quebec in general, like what do you think there are some things that we can take with us in this from this quarantine season? Was there any major lessons learned?
I mean, I think the entire planet is kind of learning that we have bad priorities where we stop thinking about our health and our entire Earth. I mean, there are so many conspiracy theories from where this virus came from, but still, I mean, if I look around myself when I'm in outside, I see less people taking public transport, more people trying to move around on their bicycle. I mean, I didn't have a bike, so I tried to find one myself. I tried to get one for the last year. I'm pretty tall, so it's difficult to find a right size bike. And I couldn't find one. I mean, it took me 2 months to find one because everyone was looking for a bicycle. And now when I'm outside, there's quite a bunch of people that is on the bike when they go to the park or their work, I guess, or even shopping. So I think people are starting to realize, why should I take the bus when I can take a bike or I can walk? It's a healthier lifestyle. It's good for the environment if less buses are driving around. So I think people might actually think about that more. I think also people on a social standpoint, they kind of think about their place and their role with in regards to their different relationship when it's family, friends, even their co-workers. I mean, it can happen so fast. I've seen so many horrible stories of people that were fine, kind of got the flu, and then suddenly they were in a coma for 3 weeks, or even worse, they passed away, and it's terrible thought. So I think people are probably are getting more conscious, and yeah, they're taking more enjoying the smaller things in life. It's a terrible cliche. Yeah. But I think it's actually there. Well, I mean, it's a cliche because it's true. So I think that's the major takeaway. I mean, there are probably many more. I mean, everyone has their own evaluation, but on my part, yeah, it's definitely enjoying not getting too stressed out about very minor things. Especially because like now you see people that are in definitely worse shape than I am. Definitely sadder things happen to them. So you kind of you become more I don't know if you say that, self-reflectant, but you kind of you have a bit better opinion about your own place in society, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think even in the high levels of tennis, people are learning lessons too. Like if you look in the in the news, lots of players are just trying to like navigate the fact that they don't even have their main source of revenue. So that was one of the biggest things, and it's actually one of the major discussions parts, especially obviously from the part of the players on how and when to come back. And lots of players were critical of Novak Djokovic stance against going to the US Open, because he claimed, oh yeah, I'm gonna travel with like 6 people, but now I can only take only one. And the majority of players were like, well, I can barely take one person with me, so that would be just fine.
Yeah, definitely on international tennis point of view, it's like the organizations, they have to kind of really rethink prize money and all that stuff, because you obviously Federer, Djokovic, they have actually Federer is now was the highest paid athlete in 2019, but I mean Djokovic probably doesn't have a very sad bank account to look at. And probably that's the same case for the entire top 50, maybe 100, but yeah, those guys that are 200, 600, I mean the ranking goes up to I think it goes up to 9,000 or something, but you have players that are 1,000 in the world, and they're actually putting their entire career into tennis. But what are they doing now? It definitely is a food for thought for the ATP, WTA, ITF, thinking about, okay, well, why are we paying these guys millions, but some players are just they're having trouble making ends meet. They use whatever they win to go to the next tournament and kind of hope to get further into the next tournament, so they have less expenses. I loved actually the idea of like a fund for players that are in badder water. I kind of like the point of view Dominic Thiem had, that saying that he wouldn't endorse it because he saw some of those guys that don't put in the same work that he does.
Yeah.
I mean, I I'm sure there are guys on the tour that don't have the talent and maybe don't have the same work ethic. But yes, truth remains that they still, they still trying to get their name on that ranking higher, and hoping to get more sponsorship money or and just tournament money.
Yeah.
So hopefully there will be some kind of decision. I mean, it's great that we had the equal pay when it comes to men and women in Grand Slam. Hopefully it can happen. Hopefully it can happen as well in the other tournaments. I mean, I would have expected it to happen in lower ranked tournaments before Grand Slam.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, do the same with lower ranked players, and also do it more for wheelchair tennis. I mean, those players, it's even more impressive than watching Federer or Djokovic or Serena play. They're actually doing two things at once.
Yeah, all the challenges they have to overcome are much bigger, right?
Yeah. And I mean, they win a Grand Slam, and they win maybe just as much as between brackets a normal player who loses in the first round or second round, maybe depending on the tournament. So yeah, that's tough, and now they don't have tournaments either, so they're probably they're in a bad place as well financially, probably in the same spot as maybe a 200th or 300 player in WTA or ATP ranking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I feel like the Grand Slams ended up with the prize money just because they're in the spotlight, and people that have a voice like Venus Williams, who advocated a lot for it. She was a big player and she had a voice, and she would win 5 Wimbledons, right? So it makes sense PR wise to say that the Grand Slams ended up having to pay equal prize money before. I guess, in my opinion. But speaking of maybe spotlight and fans, all of this kind of combines in the sense some of tournaments were considering having, I guess the US Open even mentioned that a little, to have a tournament held without fans on the stands, and people were expressing their ideas. And obviously for me, as a person who goes to only my one tournament and Rogers Cup whenever I can, maybe it would be a weird experience. I would love to watch it on TV, regardless if there's fans or not. But I think it would be weird. But I guess from the standpoint of a player who's maybe really just itching to get back on play because their money funds are kind of getting lower by the day. So I guess what do you think about the idea of holding tournaments without fans, from the lowest ones to the biggest stages on earth?
Yeah, well, I mean, for it, I'm definitely curious, like you, to see what it would look like. I mean, I would just wonder if I just wonder how I personally would feel if I was watching like 3 years ago. It was the Nadal Federer Australian Open final, where it was 5 set, 4 hours, brutal, beautiful games, and super exciting. But I wonder what it would be like if it's the same game, but instead of hearing the crowd scream out when the ball is just on the line, or when it's a break point in the fifth for one of the players, or match point. I mean, it would be really weird. And I don't know if players would enjoy it. I don't think. I think we would see definitely the difference between talent and the big stage, because I think people like Djokovic, he plays against the crowd, because we saw at Wimbledon, Federer was definitely the crowd favorite, and he said, when there was match point for him, I imagine them saying Novak instead of Roger. But if there's no one actually screaming your name, maybe it will also it will kind of change your mindset maybe as well. And they often say I was in a flow, I was hitting the ball well, the crowd was there cheering me on, and it kind of helped me cross the line, instead of I mean, sometimes they just need that boost. And so maybe I would be curious to see if it would change some results dramatically. I mean, like someone like Kyrgios, he plays the crowd when.
True, that's very true.
But he also plays the crowd negatively, so perhaps suddenly he can really focus because there's no one actually screaming in his ear. So I would be curious. Definitely, it's not very, from a marketing or business standpoint, it's not very attractive, and it doesn't sell well. But I mean, if people can actually play again, the players can play, we can watch some. I don't think anyone would be very sad. I think what would be personally the best scenario is that you only have local crowds. Like you cannot accept anyone that comes. Well, that you have those diehard fans that will fly down to Australia and will actually go to the games. But I mean, if you're a tourist, you cannot go to the tournament, or you can only have a maximum capacity per game. I think that would be the best scenario. But I would be actually curious to watch. I mean, I've watched Challengers and Futures on TV or on streaming. And it's you don't get that same sensation when you have 20,000 people screaming when it's super exciting. You actually are sitting on the couch and you still have your heart pounding. But we'll see. I mean, I'm curious. What would you watch? Federer Djokovic Wimbledon final, and there's actually no one there apart from one coach and on each side and the ref.
I would likewise be extremely curious to see like what would that feel like. I think on TV, oftentimes we like to compare. Oftentimes, like what does it feel like to be on the stands as if the point to be on TV. And my first thought when they said, well, we might have to have a tournament with no fans, I thought about it and I thought, well, there's millions of spectators on TV, and as opposed to like maybe 13,000 people on site. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not gonna be there screaming. I'm not gonna be feeling the energy, and I can barely ever see the crowd, I guess. So I thought for myself, maybe the match is just gonna be pretty much the same. But then, like, come to think of it, like through the weeks and whatever, I started thinking as well, like, the energy would be extremely weird. And I don't know who said it. I think it was Federer who said it was going to be a little bit eerie to be in a tournament like that. It's like, I cannot imagine they be playing on center court of Wimbledon with no crowd. That would be borderline scary. Like, it would be really strange to play in a sense, like a big match, and at the end of the day you're gonna pick up that trophy and you're gonna show it to nobody, just show it to the camera. I think it would, for them, you would probably feel like coming back to juniors days when they only have their parents watching.
That's why I wonder if I wonder if, like, if for maybe 3-4 years we didn't have any crowds, if the ranking would still be the same. Players that really thrive on playing against that crowd, or they get boosted into that super mode, like a Djokovic, who is like, okay, well, you're not for me, you're against me, well, I'm gonna show you that I am the best on court. I mean that's something not a lot of players can do. There will be a whole other level of psychology there. I mean, I would be interested how a psychologist or a sports psychologist would be like, how they would see it. I guess they would have an expertise on that kind of idea.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, like from history books standpoint of view. If for two things that we've talked about here, is one, no fans, and the other one would be whether players from outside of the local tournaments would be able, like if you said Felix Auger-Aliassime versus Shapovalov, we would see maybe a final if nobody came to Canada, but that would maybe be a stain on their career. It would be like a bittersweet moment of victory, I guess, because it's kind of like you win a tournament, but you know that was it wasn't that there wasn't competition, but the real competition that is always there wasn't there that year. And I guess if Novak Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal decided we're not going to play in the US Open, whoever wins that tournament will never leave. It will never leave the side of their names the asterisk of during coronavirus crisis, because it would be really strange for them to. Well, I did win my title, I did win my tournament, but does that mean anything?
Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, I guess that some would be like, oh well, I've got a U.S. Open trophy. No one's gonna take that away from me, and I mean that they're absolutely right. I mean, it's the same if they manage to get to they still have to manage to get to that final. But yeah, I mean, imagine the big three is not there, and Dominic Thiem or Tsitsipas wins the tournament, and I mean, journalists cannot write in that case. It's the finally the rising stars are taking over, or the new generation, because those guys weren't there. I mean, we can say the same thing when Federer will retire. I mean, it would be like, if Thiem finally wins the tournament, would he have won if Federer was still there? I mean, it's always going to be a source of discussion. But I'm really curious. I mean, it's really kind of scary to see what's gonna happen for the rest of the season. But also, it's exciting. I mean, it's the unknown, and that's I think that's what makes it scary and exciting at the same time.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, I think one of the reasons why I love watching tennis, well, sports in general, I guess, is just really that coming into a match and you just don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know who's gonna be the winner at the end of it. It's really interesting for me.
And, I mean, we actually had the discussions in our team as well. I mean, we don't know how tournaments are going to be for the juniors here now. Obviously, juniors, when they come with one parent, maybe both. There's not a whole team behind it, but maybe in the beginning we want to have tournaments again. We cannot have parents stay with the kids or at the tournament itself. They have to be outside, kind of thing. But yeah, for kids it will be less fun as well. They want to show to their mom or their dad, look what I've been practicing, and now I'm beating this other kid who's the same age. I mean, sports is going to be a lot different. I watched some of the soccer in Germany where they've started again, and even players, when they score a goal, they kind of don't know what to do. They're happy, but usually they would run towards the stands and shout, celebrate with all the fans, and now they're just like, oh well, I've scored, that's pretty awesome. There's my teammate, we did it, and then let's set up again for the next play.
It must feel weird. I guess in a way it must feel a little bit numb when you're playing. You're just focusing enough that you don't necessarily pay that much attention to the crowd, but once something actually happens and you get to like kind of get back to the real world for like a couple seconds and just look up and just kind of like, okay, there's nobody here. It must feel extremely strange for them. So maybe I just want to ask one more question, just out of curiosity even. And we've mentioned here Federer's tally of Grand Slam titles, and we've talked about prestige in terms of like winning in front of fans and against the best ones in the world. So do you have an opinion on the greatest of all time, the GOAT debate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a diehard Federer fan, I would say Federer, obviously. I did read an interesting article maybe 2 weeks ago. Pat Cash was saying, well, Federer cannot be the GOAT because he was never the best of his generation. But that's what makes it tricky, because Federer started in 1999, so he was at the end of Sampras's generation, and he was in the generation Roddick, Hewitt, end of Safin as well, he was the best during that time. He was among the best with Nadal and Djokovic, and now the last 5 years, it's Djokovic and Nadal actually as well. So it's really tricky because, I mean, if you look at also Nadal, he could be the GOAT. I mean, it depends how you look at it. I mean, winning 12 of the same Grand Slam, I mean, that's incredible. I went to Roland Garros so many times, and I was luckily there in 2009 when Federer won.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
But the other years when it was Nadal, I mean, it's incredible to watch, but you kind of, as soon as the first points are played, Nadal is going to win this.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I mean, I'm always going to be the Federer guy. But I think you cannot even compare generations. I mean, you look at Jimmy Connors, who's got the most titles of all, but he doesn't have. He's not even in the top 3 of most Grand Slam titles. So it's so tricky to actually to make to pronounce anything. I mean, even if you don't know, maybe in 10 years Tsitsipas will have more Grand Slams than Djokovic, but he was in the middle of Djokovic's career. So can we then say, oh well, is Tsitsipas the greatest of all time? I mean, I don't think we'll ever have a generation again of Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer at the same time of that caliber. But I'm actually going to be excited as well when those guys are not there anymore. I mean, it will be fun to. Sometimes I actually enjoy. I love watching the women's play and the men's play, but I enjoy the women's more because you have that questioning of, I mean, it could be Andreescu, and she did win it. But we had so many surprises in the last 10 years. Schiavone at the French Open. We had Ostapenko. I mean, so many surprises. Bartoli. But with the men's, we had Cilic once. We had Wawrinka 3 times. We had Murray 3 times. But it will be fun to actually think like, Medvedev is really on fire this week. He can win it, but then the next tournament he's out in the first round, and you suddenly have Felix winning it. So I mean, it's gonna be weird when Federer, because obviously Federer will be the first one to quit. I mean, I would be so surprised if Nadal or Djokovic were to retire before Federer. I mean, that's actually not even imaginable. But as time will go, like even if Nadal and Federer are not there anymore, and Djokovic actually wins 4 or 5 more Grand Slams, can we say he's the greatest? Because Federer and Nadal were not there anymore, and he had slightly lower caliber players. I mean, it's difficult to say. But if if someone's pointing a gun at me and I have to say a GOAT, I'm gonna say Federer. And same thing with the women's. It's Serena. I mean, she's the GOAT. I mean, she still has 1 or 2 left to surpass Virginia Woolf.
Margaret Court.
Margaret Court's there, I mean, Serena is same thing. But I'm always gonna take into account also because I'm in marketing, branding, sponsorship. If you take everything outside of tennis as well. I mean, Federer is such a trendsetter. I mean, he's the best paid athlete. He does so much with his foundation. He did he contributed during the coronavirus, I guess, as well. Maybe he will do as well with the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement as well. I don't know. But I mean, he's done so much outside of tennis as well. That I think that takes into account as well what makes a GOAT. But if we stick to just tennis numbers, so far Federer is the GOAT, and he will be, in my eyes, he will remain that stature. I just hope he gets to 2021. I mean, because Wimbledon last year, it's still too fresh in my memory.
It hurts a bit.
It's always sad to see someone lose when they had match points, and even worse when you're going to win a Grand Slam.
True. Yeah, like when I was looking at that match, I think I I think I wrote a tweet once in one of those discussions on Twitter. Like, the one thing that I said for myself is, I wonder if Federer has the most number of Grand Slams because he was so consistent into getting there, into the finals, because I think he has the record for most quarterfinals and semifinals straight in Grand Slams, and he has several incredible like Grand Slam records and number one records. But like one of the things that he lacked, I feel like, over the years was against those two guys, Djokovic and Nadal, was necessarily finishing the match when it mattered.
He started to think. Yeah, he was starting to think. I think like the same thing with Wimbledon last year. I think the first point was just an amazing return from Djokovic.
Yeah.
And I think Federer must have said, "Oh no, I have to get this next point. I just have to knock it out of the park, and then, and then I'm done with it." And he tightened up for just those 2 points, and then I think that kind of changed the whole dynamic of the final.
Yeah. Which ended up being one of the greatest Wimbledon finals. Which, by the way, I think the single greatest Wimbledon finals, in my opinion, was the 2008 final, in which Nadal won. But that one, And honestly, I guess in that match, it wasn't even Federer's fault, because he actually came back from 2 sets to love down, and the rest is history. But I think Nadal deserved to win, but Federer really showed why. I think Federer, if not, he's at least the greatest Wimbledon player of all time, maybe in the men's circuit. It would be difficult to challenge maybe Martina Navratilova's records and stuff like that. But
definitely. I mean, it will always be, and that's what makes it fun. And the debate is still there. You have all the clans. I mean, it stays within the appropriate, respectful human interactions. I mean, obviously, you sometimes have the real diehard fans that will say nasty things.
Those are sad.
But I mean that only makes it more exciting, as long as people stay respectful. But I think it's fun, and I hope definitely we'll have, like I said, when those guys are gone, when they've retired from professional tennis, that we can have that discussion with the Felix, with Tsitsipas, with Zverev. That people that were Federer fans that will identify with Tsitsipas, that Djokovic fans will identify with probably Medvedev, and then, Nadal, there's the only lefty is Shapovalov, but maybe Dominic Thiem, because he's a good clay court player. I hope there will be, instead of it being always 3 guys competing for the Grand Slam title, it will be like the entire top 20. That even
something like the 90s.
That would be exciting. I mean, you can have like a guy who is 19th or even 30th suddenly have a great tournament and just win. That would be awesome.
Get it,
So I guess on that note, like, we could obviously keep talking forever. As we said, like, the debate is never really over, but the podcast has to be over at some point. So, but I guess the bottom line of everything, coronavirus, no coronavirus, recreational, professional debates or not, I think the greatest point that we can get to is like that we have to have fun with it. It has to be for fun. It has to be for good spirit and sportsmanship. And I guess it was really great talking, man. It was great talking to you, and great discussing opinions and learning more about even Tennis Quebec and how you guys are from the inside a little bit.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and I mean, it's like you said, always enjoy having fun playing tennis, and obviously now we have to do it even more safely. Yeah. So I guess that's something that people have to keep in mind, obviously, nowadays.
Yes, sure.
But it's great. I love the podcast, and I love talking about tennis. So whenever you need someone to talk about tennis on podcast or just in life,
awesome.
Tennis is one of my favorite subjects. We should teach it in school, actually.
Sorry?
We should teach it in school, where you should have tennis history.
Oh, yeah. That would be amazing. Like, learning in history who has the most Grand Slam titles in the world. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I'll definitely keep you in mind and talk. We will probably have you at some point again in this podcast, and I have to say no more about like how I love tennis. I do have this podcast, and I'll be here again next week. And so yeah, it's great fun talking to you, and yeah, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your time, Martin. And yeah, have a very great week.
Yeah, you as well.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was the interview with Martijn Kentie. And thanks a lot for Martin and Tennis Quebec for participating in my podcast. It really means a lot to me. And thank you very much for listening to this podcast. And if you liked it, please follow my Facebook page for news and follow my Instagram page. And I'm also on Twitter constantly at @Rolenberg, not Andy or Andre, but like you say, tennis and bagels. Well, that's me. Well, yeah, thank you so much. Have a great weekend and bye-bye.